Hey, welcome to Mistake Man. I'm starting a new project and I'd like to share it with you guys. So, I recently did a video on how to build this papercraft ghost model, and it was a series of videos that were kind of like a tutorial on how to build it, but it was also learning a little bit as I went along. So, it was kind of a hybrid of tutorial slash project video. This is going to be more like a project video. It's something I've never done before, and it's related to the ghost model. So when I was recording the video on how to build the papercraft ghost model, this here is my prototype. And so I had to actually build another ghost so I could show you how it was done. So I've got two of them here, right? This is the original prototype. This is the one I built for the series of videos. And I'm going to keep the prototype. That's mine. I'm going to keep that forever. And this one, I actually want to give this to a friend. So, but I don't want to just hand it over like this. I want to package it up in a box, and I had this idea of making the box look like an engram from the game Destiny, which this ghost is from, this character. So, so I want to try and figure out how to make the box look like an engram. And if you're not familiar with what that looks like, this is an engram. Um, it's kind of like a, I don't know, spacey sci-fi kind of thing where you pick it up and decrypt the engram and out comes a piece of gear, a weapon or a piece of armor or whatever, or a ghost. And so I want to try and make something that will look like an engram. So my original thought was I want to try and make the box look like an exotic engram, which is kind of the best type of engram you can get in the game, which has this yellowish gold color. And it's not going to just be just a solid dodecahedron. That's this 12-sided polygon shape of the engrams. It's the outer shell is transparent, and then you can see there's stuff going on inside. There's a smaller dodecahedron on the inside, and then just some kind of flashy, sparkly stuff on the inside. I'm going to try and make something that looks kind of like that. So I'm going to build the outer shell out of clear plastic, yellow plastic if I can find it, and then have like the inner portion, the inner dodecahedron that's not transparent will actually be the box that contains the ghost. So I need to design a 3D model of that inner dodecahedron and size it so that it's big enough to contain this ghost with the stand. Probably. I suppose I could size it to just be the ghost and then just have the stand be separate, not actually in the box. We'll see. To see what I decide to do. So make that inner dodecahedron big enough to encapsulate the ghost and be able to open up, probably like this, open up like that. So I think I'll make it in two halves, open it up, but then around that is going to be a larger transparent dodecahedron, and I'm going to have to make it so that the inner dodecahedron looks like it's suspended inside of the outer clear dodecahedron. And I'm going to try and get some of the, I don't know, some of the sparkly effects and like different like internal facets. And you can see in the picture there's kind of like concentric pentagons or really concentric dodecahedrons that are, I don't know, look like they're radiating outward from that inner dodecahedron. I'm going to see if I can simulate that somehow. I think it's going to be fun, and I want to bring you along, show you how I kind of go through my design process and how I'm going to figure out how to make it. So thanks for joining me. So I want to show you what I've come up with as far as designing the 3D model for this Engram box. So I've got my 3D modeling program here, Autodesk Inventor, and this is the program that I use to design the 3D model for the Ghost papercraft, which you can see here. And I'm going to use it to help me design the Engram box because I need to make sure that it actually fits the model. So I've got the model here. I've placed it into an assembly, and I've modeled up a dodecahedron, which was kind of a fun exercise in geometry. I had to look up some geometry formulas for pentagons and dodecahedrons and learn a little bit about that. And actually creating the model was kind of fun too, trying to figure out how to actually create that in 3D space using the tools inside of Inventor. And I found a cool video from this guy. There's a link down in the description, and he had a really clever way of creating a dodecahedron. He was using Solidworks, but I was able to translate his workflow from Solidworks into Inventor. And if you're curious, it's kind of cool. You basically just sketch the pentagon that you want, and then you extrude it with a taper to kind of create this shape here, and then you do sketch another pentagon down at the bottom, and it's slightly offset. You can see it's rotated from the top one, but it's down at the bottom face, and you extrude that. But instead of doing it as a new solid, you do it as an intersect. So it basically just keeps only the material that is intersection between those two extrusions, and you end up with the dodecahedron, which is really cool. Anyway, so this is the inner dodecahedron, which I set that up to be about 170 millimeters. I had to kind of play around with that to get that to fit. So what I did was I placed the ghost model into into an assembly, and then I placed the inner dodecahedron on top of that, and you can see inside of there is the ghost. And I just adjusted things, moved it around, resized the dodecahedron until it fit. And I think I like this size. It looks good. There's enough clearance in there, but it's not going to be too big, I think. So I did that, and then, of course, the Engram has the inner dodecahedron, and then on the outside is another dodecahedron that I'm going to build out of clear plastic. And so I modeled that as well. You can see it there. So I sized that to be, I just had to take a guess here, around 280 millimeters. I needed it to be not so big that it was just unwieldy. It's going to be like a gigantic box that's, yeah, I don't want it to be too big. But I don't want it to be so small that I need some room between this face here and this face here to do something to simulate the kind of sparkly effects. Yeah. So I tried 280 millimeters from face to face on this outer one. What I want to do, obviously, I can get a feel for how big that is on a ruler, but it's hard to visualize how big that's going to be in 3D, in real life. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a prototype or a proof of concept. Actually, build this outer dodecahedron out of some paper and see if I can get a sense for how big that's going to end up being. Here is a template that I decided to build. I wanted to get a sense for how big this thing is actually going to be. I tried to size it as small as I could get and still get the ghost inside of it, but not be so big that it was just going to be ridiculously huge. So now this obviously looks way bigger than that ghost, but there is another dodecahedron that's going to be smaller that's inside of this larger dodecahedron, because the Engram has the transparent outer dodecahedron, and then inside of that is a smaller opaque dodecahedron, and that's what's going to contain the ghost model. And I wanted there to be some space there, because the whole effect of the engram is that you can see that smaller dodecahedron inside, and then there's just kind of some, I don't know, flashy, sparkly effects that make it, look all space magic-y. And we need some distance between the outer dodecahedron and the inner one to kind of give us some room to create some kind of effect that will hopefully look cool. So I wanted to see how big this was going to be. So I designed my 3D model, but again, that's just in the computer in virtual space. I wanted something real that I could look at and judge whether this was going to be too big or too small. So I went ahead and printed out some templates from the 3D model, and I just found this large sheet of, I don't know if you can see the edge of that. Whoop, the edge of that there. That's just corrugated fiberboard, cardboard. Pretty thin stuff, not like super heavy duty, but it came in a large sheet that I got from uh, a package for a piece of furniture from IKEA, I think, one of their flat packs. And anyway, it was perfect because it was big enough that I could build this, cut this all out as one piece, and then fold it all up, and that was just going to cut down on the amount of work I'd have to do. If I was just going to build this out of regular cardstock, these pentagons barely fit on a sheet of paper, and I'd have to glue each one of them individually, so every seam would be glued, and that would just, I could do that, but that was just going to take more time than I wanted to put into this, since this is just a guide, essentially, just a proof of concept, if you will. So I made this up, and it turns out it's the engrams in the game, if you compare them to the character height of the characters, they're actually pretty big. We were playing the game. My wife and I both play with a clan, and I had her stand next to one of the engrams that dropped, and so I could get a sense of how big they really are in the game. And it almost came up to her knee, so they're pretty big. Way bigger than I would actually want to build this box to be full scale. So I'm fine with the size of this, even though it's not 1-to-1 scale with what you'd actually find in the game. It's still a little big. I wouldn't go any bigger than this, but I think it's small enough to fit this, but also give me some room to create the effects. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I want to show you kind of the thought process, the experimentation that I'm going through here. So first of all, this is half of the dodecahedron that's going to be inside of the larger dodecahedron. And this is the part of the box that's going to actually contain the ghost. So I had to build this big enough to contain the ghost and the stand, but not so big that the outer dodecahedron became unmanageably large. So as you can see, this fits in here nicely. I mean, it doesn't fit nicely. It's not. They're obviously two incompatible geometries, but it does fit. And I think what I'll do when I actually package this up for delivery is I'll go ahead and put some tissue paper in there, and just to kind of take up some of that space, and so it doesn't rattle around when it's closed. So it'll sit in there more nicely than this. And then I'll put some tissue on top of it as well, so when the engram closes, it'll be nice and protected. But that's going to be the inside, and I've just made that out of black cardstock. I just made some templates. I put all the glue seams on the outside, because what's going to be visible when this is finished is what's inside here. So all those edges look nice and clean, and it looks good. So like I said, this is half of the internal dodecahedron. So there'll be another half that I'll build exactly like this, and it'll just fit. So these points on the top half will fit into those points on the bottom half, and it'll close up. We have to also attach the outer dodecahedron that's going to be transparent, And this is where I've been doing some experimentation to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work. So what I've been doing is I got some clear, some transparent, colorless plastic. I just got this from a paper supply store. I'm not sure if I am going to go with this in the end because I don't know if you can see that well on there, but it's a little cloudy. It's not crystal clear, and I'm not sure if I like that effect. I think I might. I think when it gets assembled, it's gonna kind of make it look dull and cloudy. And I don't know if I'm gonna like that. So I know I can find other stuff that's about the same thickness. I think they called this 10 mil. I'll find something that's a similar thickness because I like the durability, the strength of this material. It's not too floppy. So I want to do something that's about the same thickness, but I know I can get some clearer stuff. I've used clearer stuff on other projects, so I'll see. I can find something like that. But this is good enough for prototyping. So I've got that. You can see I've already cut this out into a pentagon, and this is the actual size of the outer dodecahedron. So this is going to go one of those faces on the outer. And then, so that's going to be, if this is like the top half, that's going to be offset from the top by, I don't know, a couple inches, about 50 millimeters. And in the game, it just looks like that's floating, right? It's space magic. You don't have to have a real structure to support that. But here in real life, I've got to be able to, I can't just make it float. So I've got to add some structural support between the outer dodecahedron and the inner. And so what my idea here is to run some plastic that goes, basically a sheet of plastic that goes from like this edge here down to that edge there, and then do that on all the edges. And so it essentially makes a lattice, or for lack of a better word, that will support the internal dodecahedron. And it also gives me a surface on which I can add some effects to kind of make it look more like what the engrams you see in the game. So the engrams in the game almost have like a concentric pentagons that kind of radiate outward from this internal dodecahedron to the outside one. And so I think I can use those support sheets to create that effect somehow. That's a part I'm still trying to experiment with. All right, so I like how big that's a good size. The 280 millimeters is what I ended up going with. Built that paper model and it turned out to be a good size. I was happy with it. So I'm going to go ahead and build that. I want to also kind of build a proof of concept of this inner space here where I'm going to be doing something to simulate some of the internal structure of the engram. And so I built this piece here, which is, so that larger pentagon is the outside face of the outer dodecahedron, and that's the face of the inner dodecahedron, that smaller pentagon. And then all these faces here are going to be for basically to go from edge to edge. So I'll place that in context of the larger assembly so you can see where that goes. So it goes right there. And I'm going to be essentially building those faces, those sloped faces out of clear plastic. And that'll give me kind of this bowl shape that I can put some other things in to simulate the internal structure. So here's that model in Pepakura. I loaded up the model inside of, well, in Inventor. If you want to export, you can export a 3D model as in another format, and if you export it as OBJ, then Pepakura knows can read that file format. So that's what I did, exported it as OBJ, and then I opened it up in Pepakura, and I get this 3D model. And when I unfold it, I'm able to get these shapes. So that's the bottom larger pentagon that I'm able to just barely fit on one sheet, 8.5 by 11 sheet, and then the outside, and then the top smaller pentagon. So I'll go ahead and cut this, print this out on copy paper as a template, and use it to help me cut this out of clear plastic so we can get a sense for what that is going to look like. So I made this one here. So this is kind of the rest of that shape. So this, like I said, is the outer, one of the faces of the outer dodecahedron, and then these sheets of plastic are the ones that go from here, this edge, down to this edge, right? So that's essentially what sit on the inner dodecahedron, like that. So the pentagon inside here, this back face here, is the same size as this on the inner dodecahedron. So that would sit there like that, and that would essentially be one of 12 pieces like that. So I'd have to build 12 more things like that to help me build out that shape. I don't think I'll end up actually constructing it in this way, like building 12 of these. Because for one, I don't need a sheet of plastic on the inside here. I can just attach these sheets of plastic directly to the black cardstock on the internal dodecahedron. So I'll skip that piece, leave that out, and just do the outside ones. And then, yeah, still have this outer one that's going to have to glue on. But I'll build all of those out from here first, because I want to be able to put some more stuff inside of here. And that's to kind of simulate the shiny effects and the concentric pentagons that you kind of see on the Engram. My original intention was to make this look like an exotic Engram, so to have it be colored yellow. And I've been trying to find clear plastic like this that's yellow and of a thick enough that it has some structural strength to it. But I am struggling to find anything that is readily available or not going to be too expensive, because I'm going to need quite a bit of it. You know, I can really only get a single one of these out of a size 8.5 by 11 sheet, and maybe like 2 of these sections out of a sheet, maybe 4. So it's going to end up being a lot of plastic sheet material. And I have found some, but it's priced a little bit too much that I want to spend for just a kind of a silly fun project like this. So I think I've decided to go away from making it look like an exotic Engram, and my backup plan was always to maybe have it look like a bright Engram or an Eververse Engram, and those are more of a rainbowy shine colored, kind of an iridescent, opalescent color thing going on. And so I think I can make that work, and I think it's actually going to look cool. I like the idea. So there's a couple things that I've got for that I think I can make that work. And one is I don't want the internal dodecahedron to be black like this from the outside. I do want it to be black on the inside, but on the outside, no. I want that to have more of like an iridescent, opalescent, shimmery rainbow effect. And so I was able to find some cardstock that has really cool. I love that effect on there. So you can see there's the reflection of my workspace lighting, but then it's got this really cool rainbow effect from certain angles. And it's just cardstock. It's essentially, I got it from the scrapbooking aisle from a craft store, and it's just some of this stuff. This is just a plain mirror. Hey, there's my face. Hi. So it's just a plain, this one's just a plain silver mirror effect. And it's, again, just on, it's just cardstock. And it's just got this cool foil on the front. And I was able to find one that had, I got that silver one just in case I was able to do the exotic Engram. I was going to use that silver one in the middle. But for the rainbow Engram, I'm going to use this stuff, which is really cool. So I found a sheet of that, and it's just a 12-inch square sheet. And I was able to cut out 6 of these pentagons out of that 12 by 12 sheet. And again, these are the same size as what we have on the internal. So these will go there and essentially just stack up to. This is the first time I've done this. I haven't actually seen it with all of them together like that. That is cool. I like that. Anyway, so these 6 will go around this half, and I'll get another sheet of this. I think it was about $3, $2.50 maybe for that sheet, which is expensive, but $5 for this project, I'm willing to spend that for something as cool as that. It's going to work great. So those will go around there, and I think what I'll do is to hide as many glue seams as I can, since this outer dodecahedron, this outer structure, is made of transparent plastic, where you can basically see all of the glue seams that are going to have to be in here, right? So these ones on the inside here, those ones, not those ones, I'm not about to talk about those, but these inside ones, there's nothing I can do about that. I don't know of any other way to make that work. So there's going to be glue seams that will have to be there, but I think there's going to be enough other stuff going on that they won't stand out too much. But okay, so these ones, like I said, I'm not going to do a sheet of plastic on the bottom side here. Instead, I'll just have these little side, I don't know what to call these, little internal supports that are going to attach directly to the black cardstock of the inside dodecahedron. And so if you just imagine this sheet's not here, I'll still build out this shape, but those glue seams will be glued to the black cardstock. And then to hide, but those are going to be very visible, because that's really kind of the focus of the whole Engram, is what's going on inside there. So in order to hide those, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and glue those tabs to the black cardstock on the outside here, so you can't see them from the inside. But then just take one of these and place it over that. So that will essentially hide those inside glue seams. So I think that'll be a nice clean look in there. Okay, so that'll look something like that. But then I don't want to just have the clear plastic on the outside. I think that'll look just kind of boring. So I want to do a little bit more on the inside here. I want to give it a little bit more of a rainbow shimmer. And I also want to try and do something to simulate those concentric dodecahedrons, basically those concentric pentagons that go around each face. And what I've thought to do that is there is some like transparent cellophane type material you can get that has like a shimmery effect to it. And I actually have some here at home. It has more of a yellow. It's kind of yellow, but from certain angles, like certain reflection, I don't know how well the camera will pick that up, but there's kind of a yellowish and green reflections off of this stuff. But if you hold it up, it's like pink and blue light that transmits through. Let me put that in front of some white paper. Maybe you can see that a little bit better. Okay, so from some angles, it looks yellow, but like there you can see it's kind of pink and blue. That's pretty close to what I'm seeing with my own eyes. But certain like low angles like that, you get the more yellow and green effects. But so I thought maybe I could use something like this for to make it look like an exotic engram, because it kind of has some yellow going on, but I think in aggregate, when I have this all the way around all faces of the dodecahedron, I don't think it's going to look yellow. I think it's going to be more of a pink and blue weird mixture. So, but they do make stuff like this that doesn't have that yellow look to it. It's more of just a rainbow, more like something like this, where it just has kind of a clear silvery look to it, but from certain angles it has all the colors. And so I've got some of that on order. As soon as that comes in, I'm going to try some of this stuff and see how it looks. I think it's going to work for me. But the idea here is, you can see I've cut out this pentagon here. One of my ideas was to maybe put that inside of the large pentagon on the outside, but I didn't really like the way that looked, and so I'm not going to do that. But instead what I wanted to try was putting that cellophane on these inside faces here. And so I've cut out a couple of pieces here that take that shape, and I've added some folds to it so I can place that inside. So essentially those creases that I put in line up with the edges on these corners here, and then it folds out like that. This is really loose. I would obviously need to fix that in there somehow. Haven't quite figured that out yet. Might just put a couple of spots of glue on the corners or something. We'll see. But something like that, and then it kind of has a cool, just from certain angles you get different reflections and shiny spots, but you also get some coloration looking through it. I think hopefully the color will be different on the other stuff that I got that's not supposed to be yellow. Put some white paper behind again so you can kind of see how that looks. Yeah, so I don't really want that pinkish, bluish / yellow green look of the transmitted light. It looks cool on the reflections, but the transmitted light is not really what I'm going for. So hopefully that rainbow stuff won't have that effect. We'll see. But that's the idea. But also to simulate the concentric rings, if you will, of the pentagons. Like so, this is what you'd be seeing if you looked face on to one of the pentagon faces of the outer dodecahedron. It's essentially what you'd see. And so in the engram, you'd see concentric lines making pentagons that go out, radiate outward from that center dodecahedron to the outer dodecahedron. And one way I thought of simulating that would be to take some of this cellophane and just add some folds to it, kind of like an accordion shape. See if you can kind of see it there. And so I tested that out on this piece here. I'd probably fold it a little bit differently than what I did here, because these folds are mostly the same direction. I think I'd want to have it alternate, more accordion-like, where this I scored it at first just to see if the scored lines would give me that look. Wasn't quite right, and so then I took those scored lines and then folded a few of them, and I like that a little bit better. You can see more uniform light reflecting off of these as entire faces, and so you kind of get a linear effect going on there. And so I'll do a little bit more experimenting on that to see what technique I need to use to get the best effect. As soon as I get the material that I've ordered, I'll try that out. But I think something like that's going to work. And if it's a little wrinkly, I think that's going to be okay. The exotic engrams they're pretty uniform on the inside. They just have those outwardly radiating lines. But for the Eververse engrams, the bright engrams, that's a little bit more subtle, and there's actually some more like random faceting of the rainbow effect inside of the engram. So I think if there's just wrinkles and bumps inside of that, I think that's going to kind of simulate that effect nicely. So I think that'll actually look pretty cool. So anyway, these are kind of my experiments so far. I like the rainbow paper on the inside. That's going to look great. I like the idea of gluing the plastic to the black paper and then putting the rainbow paper in afterwards to cover those seams. That's going to look good. I like the idea of putting that cellophane around there. If I can just find the stuff that has the right look, then I think that'll be a good way to go. Still experimenting with the lines, see how the best way I can get that. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of work putting all these pieces of plastic together, but I think I've got a nice design. Okay, so I've modeled up again in Pepakura, well, first in Inventor, and then I bring it over into Pepakura to help me figure out how this is all going to unfold. But this is essentially the lower half of the box without the outer faces. So these larger pentagons are left open. They're still going to be there, but I wanted to leave them out of this model so I could see what's happening inside. And these inner pentagons here are the actual going to be made out of black cardstock, and those will be the actual inside of the box where the ghost is going to set. And this is the lower half of the engram. I would make another one just like this for the top half, and it would join up at this edge around here, and I'd have a hinge in the back so it can open clamshell style. But then all of these pieces would be made out of clear plastic that would form the support structure between the inner dodecahedron and the outer dodecahedron. And I wanted to see how this would look and figure out where all the glue tabs need to be for everything and lay it out to see how many sheets of clear plastic I'm going to need to cut out all these pieces. These ones, of course, won't go out of the clear plastic. That'll be the black cardstock. And then I also need to get a sense for how much plastic I need for the whole thing. So 2 of these lower halves, well, I call this the lower half, but the upper half is just identical to this, just rotated it a little bit, right? So the 2 halves plus the outer dodecahedron. So I did actually make a combined model that has all those pieces in it. So you can't see because it's not, you can't see inside here, but it's got 2 of those lower halves, well, 2 of those halves that we just looked at. So plus the actual outer dodecahedron. So there's the larger pentagons are for the outer dodecahedron. These smaller pentagons are for the inner dodecahedron. And then all the other pieces that go for the 2 halves of the internal supports. So I need to just kind of adjust and massage this layout so I can fit everything onto sheets. That'll help me figure out how many plastic sheets I need to get for cutting this out. It's going to be a lot of work, a lot of cutting, a lot of gluing, but yeah, hopefully it'll look cool when it's done. So that's it for this video. Just waiting for those other materials to come in so I can experiment with different ways of simulating the internal effects, the visual effects that you see in the Engram. So that'll be coming up next in my next video. Thanks for watching.